case studies. Howard University's School of Business, led by Gene Wells, is actually developing a case study on NBA. Colleagues are from William Davidson Institute at University of Michigan are also developing another case study on Hanwell, and so forth and so on. Wits University of it's called Lagos Business School in Lagos, and Strathmore Business School are all busy as we speak, developing case studies on the winning businesses. Why did they win? Where, and also by extension, why did others lose? These are teaching case studies, but also industry-facing case studies. We are at the same time organizing public events, public speaking opportunities for these businesses, both in the US and on the continent. We are working towards internships for students from our universities in some of these businesses, and more broadly, working towards a more refined process in 2023. And all are welcome for the second edition to be held again in Johannesburg before moving perhaps to another country, because they will rotate between the US and Africa. But the next edition is on the 26th and 27th of October. And of course, Carol, as you know, you are a very tough board. You're keeping us on the toes as the secretariat. So we'll be working together as we go along. Thanks.
It'll be my pleasure. And I think that what you just talked about, Bob, is so important, that this is really about creating an ecosystem that helps propel things forward. So Michael, a professor that comes in now to Georgetown Business School, will have those business case studies that they need. And when they come to you, Mima, they'll already be experienced as interns and be ready to go. So with that, I know, Jennifer,
I think we have 10 minutes for kind of question discussion.
Do I have a reprieve to be able to have more? Because we have a lot of knowledge here.
Yeah,
You sure?
we can keep going with the discussion, and then we'll open it up for kind of broad reflection questions for this panel and on some of the themes today.
Fantastic. All right, I feel like I've gotten a reprieve here. So, Joyce, what we'll do is we'll take a couple of questions and then you can incorporate it into the things you're thinking. All right, so questions from people. Yes, please. Well, why don't we take a couple of questions and then we'll group them together. Please go ahead.
Hello, good morning still?
No, you're
afternoon. Good morning in another time zone.
Evening in Lagos.
So my name is Lakeisha Harrison. I'm an alum of the University of Michigan undergrad, an alum of the Howard University African Studies program, and a professor here in the Institute for African Studies at GW. So I appreciate this panel very much because I can relate to everything. But kind of a two-part question. To what extent did corporate social responsibility play in the evaluation of the awards? And to what extent did building production capacity on the continent play into the awards beyond just extraction from the continent?
Boy, I love the second part of that question. Yes. We had another question over here. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Gary Webster, Morehouse grad. My company's Africa Accessible. Quick one. What ways or channels are there to spread this information so that normal people who are not policymakers, educators, or different things, or not in this conversation, can understand what's happening, both on the African American side and local citizens in various African countries, to understand like what the opportunities are and to put their input into what's happening here, U.S. Africa, U.S. trade.
Fantastic. And we'll take one more question, and then we'll go ahead and have a round of it.
Thank you. Good morning, Denise Kirkpatrick from the U.S. Advisory Commission on Public Diplomacy. Piggybacking on the professor's question, I'd like to know, as a U.S. government employee, someone who has worked as the public affairs officer in Niger and in Angola and soon Senegal, to what extent did you all examine the impact, if at all, and role of U.S. diplomats' advocacy to support some of this engagement. Our department, our representative, our foreign commercial service officer, the Department of Ag, our economic officer, for example, and also public diplomacy programs through exchanges, our international visitor leadership program, who sends experts in business and trade to the United States. Were these factors part of the discussion in how well our not U.S. companies did in Africa?
All right, so we have 5 minutes left, and Jennifer is giving me that look like.
Keep going, no.
Okay.
Keep going.
I'm following your lead. I come out of television where it's incremental to the 10th of a second, so 100th of a second, really.
Very
So-
sequence.
Why don't we go down? And actually, Bob, now you are the first one in line for me where I am now. So Bob, why don't you go ahead and take a minute to answer your responses to the questions that have been asked.
Right. I think on the first question of the place of corporate social responsibility, as was mentioned by colleagues on the panel there, we thought, I think the very quick response there is that sometimes companies elevate corporate social responsibility because it has media and profiling and branding opportunities. And it seems like an add-on rather than proper engagement, which is why I think Joyce particularly, but others broadly, thought going the route of ESG, which is a whole solid area of engagement, is far better than just looking at companies saying they have built a school somewhere or they have offered 1 or 2 scholarships, so that it is part of the holistic understanding of the business. In terms of how to spread word about not just this project, but the Africa-US engagements via university to university partnerships, I think the big deal here is budgets. And I think, in fact, here, my response is an appeal. If you hear or learn of people out there that are ready to support these initiatives, including USG, kindly let us know so that we pursue them. Because as Nima, Michael, Wheeler, Joyce will tell you, people say they like this, they love these ideas, they are transformative and so forth, and say proceed and work on them, but then we need resources to do that. But we are doing the best we can, and many of these projects have taken off. The US Business in Africa Awards is off the ground, and I'm certain that we will factor in media and communication. And I think in terms of American diplomats, they're already helping in a great sense. We have very good relations with American diplomats in South Africa, for example, but also across the continent. But I think more can be done. And I'll refer back to Krista's point earlier in the fact that first panel, that the engagements could be structured better. And that's a conversation we can have. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, you know what? We're going to go to the end of the panel and then come back this way. We'll go first to Dr. Winstead, and we'll have just 1 minute each, and then we can end with the co-chair and board member of the initiative. So go ahead, Dr.
So
Winstead.
I'm going to only take 10 seconds. I just want to first apologize. I wasn't really prepared to answer your question because I didn't think I had to answer that. But I thought I was supposed to talk on language and cultural competency. So I'm just going to say thank you for the opportunity, and the issue of the impact in Africa, I think, has to continue to be considered, and not just how many dollars, how successful the U.S. companies are, but how what's the impact in Africa with African businesses. So, it's how do we measure success is really going to be, I think, a critical thing, particularly as we go forward. And I think that measurement has to somewhere have to include success on the continent.
Thank you so much. And may I just say that I think you'll probably have a lot of people signing up for your class because it was very interesting. So thank you. So Joyce, please.
Very much and wouldn't discount your input in any way, shape, or form, because it gets to the first question about extracting. It was important to me in engaging in this that the starting point was the Africa we want. so Agenda 2063. And no secret, because it's out there, I contributed to developing that document as an advisor at the AU. And so to Nima's point, that we want, what is the C-suite paying attention to? And if that C-suite is not paying attention to what is important to Africa, as outlined in Agenda 2063, such as intra-Africa trade, such as women in leadership, such as good governance, reflected in corporations, then I might not be sitting here today speaking so strongly and encouraging further investment to Professor Bob's point, so that this is more known. So there's a website, and I'm not the one to be giving the URL, but if you go on any of your search platforms and put in Wits University American Businesses in Africa Award, you will get to the website. And please, I wouldn't say tweet about it because we all have concerns there, but put it out on LinkedIn. Tell your friends about it, because the growth that we are intentional about is a deeper pool of companies from across Africa. Então, as empresas do Angola, as empresas americanas que estão trabalhando, continuando em Angola, em Mozambique, outros países. Yes, I'm speaking Portuguese. And we could say this in French also. This is not an Anglophone idea. This is to bring out the best that's happening across a 54-country continent. So for whoever is dealing with whether or not North Africa is African, let me be clear. They see themselves as Africans in business, and we on this side of the pond need not wrap our heads around whether or not they do. It is a fact, and you can go and look up case studies I wrote for, speaking of case studies, for the OECD, where Tunisia, when the access to the EU market was turned off, and they had factories lined up to label in French, Arabic, Spanish, and English, they immediately turned their eyes to shipping their tomato paste and their olive oil to DRC. Okay, so the U.S. cannot get out of our own way. That's what we need to do, right? To the point about diaspora, the Africa Union sees the sixth region of Africa as all diaspora. Soon come later, came yesterday, come tomorrow. Yes, I just spoke patois. So, Caribbean patois. So, the point here is CSR should not cut it in the U.S. And according to Africa's Agenda 2063, glossy pictures isn't where it's at. And that was what anchored the scoring. More than 60% of your possible points for getting this award was anchored in ESG in Africa.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I just love that the criteria was Africa's own criteria.
Absolutely.
This was not a Western-led thing. This truly was Africans judging the U.S. companies. I believe that we should shamelessly promote the website. So Bob, if you want to say the URL.
It is US Business in Africa Awards.com.
All right. Thank you. All right, Michael,
Sure.
last words.
My takeaway from this, and this was to the colleague who asked about the U.S. government influence. One of the things about anchoring this in a university and anchoring it with ACTA, the African Center for the Study of the United States, I think there's endless research that can be done about the context that we're talking about. How has the U.S. government influenced the success of business in Africa? That's a whole stream. That's somebody's PhD.
Or two.
Or two. So
100.
we are also, and I think there is, yesterday I spoke at a diversity forum the Department of Commerce had about getting minority small businesses involved, small and medium sized, involved in trade investment in Africa. We have two tracks of engagement in the business world in Africa, and there's a growing one for the diaspora to do more on the continent. That's a whole nother conversation. During the judging process, we had questions from diasporans who were American but had businesses on the continent. Do we fit in this conversation? That's a question. Diasporans who are here, who are now going back home. This is a late mentor talked about American Africans and African Americans. That's another conversation, and there's research that can be done related to that. So I think there's a lot that is there. In terms of reaching folks, in this age of social media, it can be each one reach one. It can be each one reach 1,000 now.
Yeah.
And we hope that you will spread the word. And we hope that as we engage with a wider network of academic institutions and young people, that they'll also spread the word. Bob talked about internships. That's a key exercise that we would like to see happen. So if you know young people who would like to spend a semester on the continent, that's part of what being a good corporate social representative is from our vantage point. So we want our corporates to welcome students from the U.S. who want to spend time getting to know what it's like to be on the ground doing business on the continent. Last thing I'll say is that what I find a key to success that you often don't hear as much about is that successful U.S. businesses in Africa hire Africans. Disproportionately, their staff is comprised, their leadership, of Africans. And that's a huge, in a continent which has, a fast-growing youth population and high unemployment for those young people, the fact that these companies are creating jobs. Now, we could start in terms of metrics, measuring how many jobs are created by U.S. companies in Africa and promote that more than we do.
Yes.
So these are some of the things that I think will come out of this work. And it really is a body of work as opposed to just an award session. So I'm very excited about what we've done. We've only just begun. Looking forward to working with all of you in that process. I've said to the center at Howard, I see Howard, I talked about BITS being a link to all of these research institutions. For me, Howard is a link to the whole HBCU community. University of Michigan has one of the largest, if not the largest, alumni association. So for me, it's a link to a lot of larger institutions. If we do that, then again, as was mentioned, very soon, these successes on the continent become well known. Again, I don't mention my other alumni, Harvard. We will promote all of this, and then a young person coming along thinking about emerging markets in the 21st century will know that Africa is at the table and is a place worth considering one's career. Years ago, that was not the case. So this, I think, helps with that. Thank you.
Thank you, that's wonderful. Nima,
All right,
last words to take us out.
because I've got 1 o'clock, so, I did realize you're with us, so, hi, Bob. And let me tell you, the visa issue, we're actually signing on that major aggregate deal at 1 o'clock related to the USABF. And the African partner export trading group could not get their visa, so you're not the only one. So alums, actually Elliott alum, graduate, MA, master's. So you can guess since I've been 45 years on the continent when that master's was. Couple of things on the CSR real quick. I want to come back to there's really it's a mainstreaming part. And I can tell you I'm on the board of something called ND Niger Delta Partnership Initiative. It is literally has a domestic local board in Nigeria. It's a Chevron CSR called PIN. Right? Partners in Niger Delta. Everything in there is about getting not the photo op of the school or the clinic, but delivering power, health to the communities that are most off the grid. As one example, and multiple programs. But that's the part I'm talking about. The CSR becomes mainstream to the business part. That's key. On the question of the commercial, the advocacy, maybe she left them. of you there. I think, we're quite, I don't know how much was in the judging, but as partners, Cynthia Griffin, the chief, whatever she was, the regional commercial senior officer.
Minister Counselor.
Minister Counselor, thank you. I mean, that's very much in there, and I think we really want to get very much that aspect in. I know as a business person, we deal very closely with the whole advocacy program going forward, so it's definitely part of it. On the key part, and I got involved with this, thanks to this gentleman here, who was a young but young professional, I guess, at the African Development Bank when I sat on the board there. When he came and I heard one thing, the African Center for the Study of the U.S. Remember that caught my attention. Why? Because I'm sick and tired. I spent my whole life in Africa, of the U.S. studying Africa. Now there's an opportunity in Africa to study the U.S. So when you get the case studies, as good as your Harvard Business case studies are, getting them out of WITS and that perspective on the African side, I think is going to be really key. And I think our selected awardees must be the corporate ambassadors, because what happens within the U.S., and I also sit on the Exim Bank's Africa subcommittee, the key becomes what? Exim or DFC will go out and talking about what they do. And I fall asleep because it's like reading a menu. Hey, we do this, and this. I said, please attach business people that know what they're talking about. They know about doing business on the continent. They will speak to other businesses that don't understand what the hell these programs mean, not when you talk about it. And I think these ambassadors must be the absolute key part that we need to introduce into commercial diplomacy. And the final point I will add is that in the outreach to universities and getting more, and I think part of the reason they're out here is because they're coming for me at the Nigeria Forum. But one of the patrons, if you will, University of Texas Dallas, John Waji, the Access Group, is now going to be introducing UT Dallas into Nigeria, into Lagos. So I think we're getting not only the American schools here and the Americans and the African schools in the African continent, but also that blend. So I think this is the kind of stuff we want to keep promoting. But the absolute final point is, I just want to see from the African perspective that African voice out here, and that's part of why we're doing this. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having the panel, and thank you to Bob, to Nima, to Michael, to Joyce, to Wheeler. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure talking about this, and really a pleasure being involved in it. So thank you so much.
I do want to say just one more thing. Partnerships has been a hallmark of U.S. policy rhetoric in Africa for decades, in fact. And I think I just do want to go back to Dr. Winstead's point that it's partnership is more than a label. The U.S. has embraced strategic partners in Africa who then were like, well, we're not that interested in being a strategic partner. I think at this conference, we've heard kind of what creates a partnership is kind of the mutual interest, mutual listening, initiatives like the Sister Cities, these university partnerships, these business partnerships where they're not there, it's not there for CSR, they're there to do business and to do well by doing good as well. And so building the substance of these partnerships, I think is critically important. And we've heard some great examples of that today. Partnerships is not just a matter of going over and saying, we're here to partner. So anyway, thank you to all of our panelists today, and thank you for a very lively and interesting and informed audience as well. It's been a pleasure.